Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Reigniting Small Business, the podcast. I'm Laura Richards, and I'm welcoming back Patrick Lee to our first joint podcast of 2021. Hi, Patrick.
Hello, Laura. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm ready and excited for this conversation we're about to have about mindset and the miracle morning.
And it's funny because you say, welcome 2021 and all. And we were talking about how I think a lot of folks out there, 2020 was a funky year. I mean, even if it was a successful year for you, you felt guilt being successful and you're watching everything that's going on. And as a society, it was a horrible year, right? So I think we were all kind of just running that marathon to get to the end of let's just get through 2020. Let's get through 2020. And then, now it's 2021. But as we all know, that whole January 1st, clean slate, you're shifting, that it's all psychological. We're in 2021. We've had the storming of the United States Capitol, right? We have COVID spiking all over the place. And I think a lot of folks are feeling sort of disoriented because they got to a finish line that's now moved. And, oh my gosh, we're not rewriting anything. We're in 2021 and this feels kind of like 2020, maybe even a little worse. What happens now?
Yeah, really. I was feeling that way. I was feeling very stuck, and I have a birthday that's 2 days after New Year's Day. So it's always a time that I feel slow and stuck. And I feel like one of my good friends gave me such a blessing because she gave me this book, The Miracle Morning, by Hal Elrod. And it was exactly what I needed because I think one of the things I do well is when I commit to something, I follow through on it. So I'm a girl that loves structure and craves structure. And when I don't have any, things get kind of loosey-goosey. And most of 2020 was like that, where you were making your own structure. But the funny thing was, Patrick, you and I were talking, and I was like, oh my gosh, I found this new system and I'm doing this thing. And I show you the book and you're like, oh, I know that. I've done that too. So how did that come to you?
Probably about 4 months ago or so, my wife, Teresa, had shown me this book. She goes, have you ever heard of this? And I was like, no, I hadn't heard of that. She goes, you should check it out. It's kind of interesting. And before, of course, I read the book, I actually listened to a podcast with the author, Hal Elrod, on it. And he had a couple of his friends and they were talking about the Miracle Morning. And so I listened to it and I thought, okay, I'm going to give this a read. And I started reading it, and it was funny because it's a very simple premise, right? Get up in the morning and do some very specific things for your routine that sets up your day and sets up your mindset. And so I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm going to follow this. And so I started getting up in the morning, and I started with a routine. And my routine was I would meditate for 20 minutes. We'll talk about that in a second. I'll meditate for 20 minutes. I'll look at a vision board. I'll read a short little snippet of something, and then I will walk. Okay, I'll go outside and I'll walk the circuit. And so I started doing this, and it was amazing how much it cleared my head, what a good sense of energy I had. I mean, it was exciting, and all sorts of weird serendipitous stuff started happening just because I was up and ready to go and thinking that way. And let me just tell the one funny thing was the reason I meditated for 20 minutes is because I thought that's how, it sounds silly, but I thought that's how much you're supposed to meditate. 20 minutes meditation, right? That's what everybody says. So there's no concept to me that I can meditate for 5 or even 10, though I think he says it in the book, just pick what you can do. But I'm like, it's 20 minutes. So I would set my phone, I'd put it down, and I would meditate for 20 minutes. And it actually worked. Now, since then, I've fallen off the wagon on some of this and had to get back on in different ways. And it was much harder once I stopped doing that to get back to 20-minute meditations. So, I think I lucked out when I started this whole thing. But it was amazing the impact that it had for me.
I think that's really huge in what you said about timing. I did the same thing. You and I are both people who jump right in. So I got the book and I started the practice of it. I just wrote down what the 6 things were, which I'll fill you in on what those are, everyone. And I just started doing each of them for 10 minutes because that's what I thought it was. And later it goes on to say, if you, for example, the acronym for his system, what he recommends is SAVERS, and it stands for silence, affirmations, visualization, exercise, and scribing, and reading and scribing rather. And so that spells SAVERS, and scribing is a fancy word for saying journaling or writing, so that he gets the good acronym out there to everyone. So if you wanted, and you don't have to do it in that order. So if you want to exercise and then do your reading because you think you'll be more mentally there, you can do it in whatever order you want. I start with meditation, and that's pretty much, I think, where he recommends to start. And it's interesting. So you get out of bed, you brush your teeth, you get yourself basically ready in 5 minutes, and you go to your spot, which cannot be your bedroom. And the meditating is amazing. I'm somebody who doesn't sit still. So if you ask me, did I ever have a meditation practice? No. I'm the girl at the end of yoga when you're in Shavasana. I'm making my grocery list. I just always got something to do. And I was able to do the meditation for the full 10 minutes. And I've seen like really great outcomes from it. And what I was telling Patrick right before we started this podcast is I found by taking this hour for myself that I definitely got more than the hour back in terms of my preparation for what I was going to do that day. So instead of starting the day opening my cell phone and checking Facebook or going down the news hole on Yahoo or whatever, I actually sat down at my desk and was like, okay, I need to fire off these 3 emails, and then I need to this, and this, and it would be a very productive, wonderful hour. So there's a little wrap up.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because the morning part is incredibly important. So, like I said, I had fallen off the wagon. I was doing this; it was working really well for me, and then I got distracted, or there's some morning meetings. I don't exactly remember what, but the next thing I know, I've gone about a week without actually doing the miracle morning. But the one thing that I could not give up and stay sane, and this has been my medicine, so to speak, for COVID, for the lockdown and everything, is walking. I need to walk every day. So what happened was I stopped doing the miracle morning, but I would still walk in the afternoons, and I would go walk later, but it didn't have the same impact. The day now had its impact on my thinking, my mindset, my brain, my emotions and all. And then walking was walking, right? Versus getting up and you setting your attitude, your mindset, and everything, which is why it's not the miracle moment or miracle thinking, it's miracle morning. And I think that's incredibly important to point out. You say, yeah, but I'm not a morning person. Well, if you want the effects that this tool can give you, you kind of have to become a morning person, or at least first thing in your day person.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And one thing that I think people take away from doing a practice like this is a keener sense of focus. And focus right now is one of those things that's so fragmented. Our focus is everywhere because there's so many new things we're assimilating and things that we have to pay attention to. I notice when I'm walking my dog, it's like, oh, I got to go to the other side of the street. That person's, not wearing a mask, or I'm not wearing a mask, or, I've got to, all the things that were normal that we did before didn't require energy or thought are now requiring more energy and thought because the process about doing them is different. So I find that when I've had these focused mornings, I will see these synergies in the world in a way that I wouldn't have picked up before because I wasn't tuning in. And Patrick, you kind of had a little moment that you were telling me about before we started the podcast of this kind of a synergy, and you're looking at things and you're like, oh my gosh, and this and this and this, and it all pops out.
So it's so funny how these things sort of roll down there. So I said I was meditating for real, eyes closed, only in my head, watching my breathing, all of that. And then when I came back to it, I was having trouble being able to do that again. Okay. And so and I'll hold up another book here, Trevor Blake's 3 Simple Steps. In it, one of the things he says is he calls it quiet time. So he's saying, for those of you who are not going to meditate or can't meditate, don't worry about that. Go sit somewhere with nothing distracting you and take a period of time, timed period of time that you're sitting in quiet, just letting the world sort of be there. So I started doing that because I couldn't quite get my head back into this. And so I'm sitting on my couch, the windows are open, I'm looking around the room, my eyes are wide open, I'm not meditating, trying just to get into a flow. And there's this big prayer plant that sits in front of the window. And so I'm doing this early, so the sun's starting to come up, and I'm sitting there for 20 minutes still. And I start watching this prayer plant, and it's the most fascinating thing. It's got different leaf colors, and it's moving. It moves it's going to the light, and sometimes it's up and sometimes down. And I could see a leaf go bloop, right? And also I'm totally fascinated with this. So long story short, I'm now doing my walking, and I start looking around, and I'm looking at trees and plants and stuff. And I'm like, well, I wonder what kind of tree that is. I've never cared about botany. I don't know. So I download an app on my phone, and now I'm running into people's yards, and I'm clicking to see what's that flower and what's this. Okay. So just a funny little side there. In the meantime, my wife is a big gardener, and she wants us to plan what's going to be our fall flowers and crops and all. And so she's asking me, do you have any preference? Well, every time she's ever asked me that in the past, I'm like, no, right? Well, no, I want to get this. And then she's looking at me like, where did that come from? Right? So it was a funny connective piece, just out of weird serendipity. But then the other part of that was funny is that your head does get clear. And at one point, I'm sitting on the couch, my head's clear and all, and I look up at my mantelpiece over the fireplace, and there's a bunch of little books there. And so I just happened to see this book. Oops, go this way, right? I'm like, I remember reading about that. I know there's a reason I have this, but I don't know what it's about. So I pick it up, and in one sitting, I read it real quickly. Now I go out and do my walk, and everything in it is about mindset. It's about, as you think is how your life unfolds. And it's making so much sense. I'm in this practice. I'm trying to do this through the Miracle Morning. I just read this book by serendipitously looking up at it and being open. I mean, it's sit there forever. I haven't noticed it, and it affirmed a whole lot of what was happening. And those kind of serendipities are incredibly important, I think, as you go down a process, because it's almost more awareness. It's not like they just happen because you started something. You become aware, and that awareness then leads you down towards where this practice has the impacts on you that it needs to have.
Absolutely. It's interesting because we talk about mindset a lot, and changing your perspective isn't as easy as it sounds. But one of the things that has a huge impact on it is the environment that you put yourself in. And so one of the ways that I think about this practice is taking myself and intentionally putting myself in a different environment for an hour. All the stimulus I'm putting my brain through during that hour is different than going downstairs, making myself a cup of coffee and opening my phone. It's very much centering me, preparing me to receive my day and putting me in a proactive stance. And I think that is, how we want to take on new things, and certainly how we want to approach taking on a new year in our businesses.
So one of the things to be super aware of is, if you look at all the research of what electronics does to your brain and does to your thinking and all, the fact that we are so addicted to our phone pings, we got to look at it. Let me check this. Let me check that. Okay, here's a news feed. If you really think about it, it's a device that's hooking you into everybody's agenda but yours, right? Like, the emails coming in are the timing of somebody else. They sent you the email then. It's what they need, right? The headlines are what the news organizations want you to look at. The advertisements, everything is about other people's agenda. If you center yourself in the beginning and get set up for your agenda for the day, you're in far better shape. So one of the things that's said is you have to get out of bed and go do your miracle morning before you check your email, before you open your phone. Don't do it. It changes the entire way in which you receive information and you're prepared to be mindful.
Absolutely. And by the way, you can make your miracle morning 6 minutes long. If you only have a minute to meditate, a minute to read, a minute to journal, a minute to do jumping jacks, and that's your miracle morning, do it. Because it's more about the practice of learning how to do these things and doing them repeatedly and taking that time for yourself than it is about the duration of each one. And obviously the amount that you're going to be able to think if you're scribing or journaling for 10 minutes versus an hour is different. If you want to read for an hour as part of your miracle morning and you have time to do that, that would be encouraged as well. But if the minimum you have is 6 minutes, take that 6 minutes and do the miracle morning. Don't just do one piece of it, in other words.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to do is to be creative, because you may find that meditation is something that you can do for 5 minutes every day, but you only have another 5 minutes. Okay. So do you do 5 minutes every day, but then Mondays you do your jumping jacks, Tuesdays you scribe, Wednesdays you do another portion of it. I mean, I think just the intention and the effort of trying to get centered, trying to give yourself and honor that time for you, will have incredible impact. And my guess is if you're successful at all with that, you're going to find more time, because all of a sudden you're going to get up a little bit earlier, and you're going to begin to build on it, because it really is such a positive sense of your attitude, the control you have, your calmness about everything. It's transformational, very honestly.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think for me, I feel like it puts me in control. And I haven't had a day yet where I wasn't excited to get out of bed at 6 a.m. And, it's winter and it's dark outside. And I'm not getting up out of bed to have a cup of coffee. I'm literally coming straight down and doing my meditation. And by the time I'm done with my hour, that's not the end of my exercise, but I do 10 minutes of like an intense cardio just to get my heart rate up and everything. And then I, grab my dog and head out the door and go for a great walk, and I'm back, and other people are just getting up. So I already have that sense of virtue. But more than that, I feel like I am in control of what happens to my day. And and I've really put a good foot forward. So I highly encourage anybody that this is sounding interesting to. The book is called Miracle Morning that we're talking about. There are other tools that you can use. And even if you just want to take a look at a piece of it, Patrick, you want to show your meditation journal that you got? 'Cause I think that's another nice.
Yeah. I had a few other things here in case anyone wanted, but I after finding the Miracle Morning, I then went to Barnes and Nobles and I saw this, and I immediately was like, well, that's interesting. And I grabbed it. And what ended up happening was I would do 1 page a day in this as part of the Miracle Morning. And it had everything in there. It has journaling. It has different styles of yoga. It has a variety of different things, because it's a sampler, basically. These are the different practices that folks use to become more mindful, more in control of their own thoughts. And so it was like a little sampler, and part of that is journaling and so on. So you end up doing a lot of what's recommended in the Miracle Morning if you're doing this workbook, but you're also testing different ways to get to that same place. So let's say you read the Miracle Morning and it doesn't work for you. My recommendation would be go ahead and accept, as skeptical as you are about, meditation, all this stuff, even though all the studies out there show it to be true. If you want to be skeptical, I understand. But you should try something to be mindful and get yourself centered and on your own positive agenda every day, because everybody else everywhere has an agenda for you. And if you aren't aware of what you're about and where you're going, and you don't have that clarity of purpose and mindset, you're easily co-opted and taken down roads for other people's agendas. And I don't mean that even in an evil way. I'm not saying they're like trying to manipulate you, but they need you for things. Other folks need you for stuff, and so they just are co-opting what it is you're trying to achieve.
I think that is very well said. Um, I think this was a great topic to do for the beginning of a new year, and one in which where we haven't had control over everything in our lives. And I think that this is one area where we can take some control back and put a good foot forward. So I hope this was helpful to the people that are listening and watching and viewing.
I think that this is one of, I think, the few times that we've specifically endorsed something. So we are endorsing The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And so check it out.
Check it out, and we'll see you here next week. Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Reigniting Small Business. Thanks, Patrick.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.